seconds. It may even be 45 seconds. Let's see, somebody's recording the meeting, so I will say continue. Did you just do that, Stan?
Yes,
I did that.
Oh, okay, just so we have it.
I think everyone gets that on their screen. Huey started it just before you left.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah, because I like to see it up on YouTube
Dick
afterward.
Vogel and Gary Ensinger are just coming in. I'm admitting them.
Let me see. Now, I didn't get a pop-up. That's
I
interesting.
did. I don't know why.
Oh.
I hadn't seen that before.
I'm
but
looking
I
at
did,
the
so it's easy
participants.
enough. I did it.
Yeah. So we're talking about my backup generator. It's a Generac system. And after about 30 seconds, it will come on. So in those 30 seconds, you'd like your UPS system to keep everything going. So I actually, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I actually have 6 UPSs in the house. I have 1, 2, 3, 3 here in my office. I have one that's dedicated to my network equipment. So I have my Netgear cable modem. I have my Netgear, I want to say Omni, but that's the wrong word. Anyway, it's a mesh network. I have a 16 port switch. I have my Alexa. I have my OB-Hi. No, Alexa, I'm not talking to you. She just asked me what I wanted. And then I have an OB-Hi voice adapter for my Google Voice. So all of those are on a smaller American Power conversion, not backups, super ups or whatever it is. Anyway, the one that puts out a full sine wave. And that, if the power goes on, off, whatever it does, seems to follow it pretty well, and the network stays up. And then I have a backup on my desktop computer, which is what's here in front of me. And I have another backup, which when I was using my second computer system, which is off to my left, I was using it for gaming, and I didn't want the game to drop. So that's in here. So in this office, there's 3 UPSs. And then there's a UPS on my home entertainment system. There's a UPS in Joyce's office. And there's a UPS in the kitchen, which has got all the different charging stuff, telephones and tablets and whatever. So it's overkill, simply. But
Hey, Mike.
fingers crossed, power will stay on. Hi, Sean.
Hey, so does the Generac have an option to come on immediately when the
No.
power gets lost?
No, you can adjust the delay. It's on the panel. I haven't researched what the minimum or the maximum is. And likewise, when power is restored, it's at least 30 seconds before it switches back to the network. The interesting thing is the transfer switch. I expect these great big, monstrous coil-operated relays, and they're not. They're fairly small. What's the diameter? I guess they're probably about 1 inch in diameter, if that. And there's 2 of them, 1 for each leg. And when the generator kicks in, the transfer relays go down and disconnect you completely from the utility. And then when power comes back, as soon as the power comes back, it waits 30 seconds and then it throws the relays up. And when it restores power, it's instantaneous. There doesn't seem to be any delay or any hiccup, at least when we tested it.
The way I would want it to work is to immediately come on and then have the delay on the back end.
Well, but let's say the power quit for 10 seconds. And
Okay,
the generator.
So it would run for 40 seconds,
I see what you're saying.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And that might be an option. I don't know. I
I'll
haven't
have to,
researched.
I'll research it. I'll see what it is.
Yeah.
And when it's quote unquote my turn, I seem to be talking anyway, but when it's my turn, I'm going to talk about a energy monitoring system that I had installed at the same time. I see somebody's head. Who is that? Bob Black? Yes, it's Bob Black's head in a dark room. And Bob, your camera is pointing from your nose up to the top of your head. That's all we see.
He's wearing a mask.
There you are.
Much better.
Is that better?
Yes, much better.
No, put it up. Other direction.
No, he's.
Well, I
You're
can't see my face on the screen, so I don't know.
What are you What are you participating with?
What? A laptop.
You should see yourself.
Yeah, I think everyone else does see themselves.
You've got a choice. In the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom client, there is a gallery view or a speaker view. And if you click on gallery view, you'll see little video vignettes of everybody who's in the conference.
All right, so I see myself now. So should I pick speaker view?
If you wish, when I talk, I'm going to share my screen. So
Yeah.
then you would want the speaker view so that you get the majority of the of my screen when I share it.
All right. Well, here I am.
Welcome. Actually, Stan, it's 5 after 7. You want to start the meeting?
Let's get started. So Mike, you got the floor. Keep going. Why don't you?
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen then. And what you're seeing is my browser. Let me just, I'm looking at a Google Photos album. And the monitoring system that I installed in my outside transfer switch / load center is called Sense. There are a number of monitoring systems like this that are available. I chose Sense because it had the minimum number of connections, and it's supposed to use artificial intelligence to determine what energy is being used in your house. And because I have a solar system, Sense Solar adds 2 more sensing units. So let's bring that up. And then let's switch to this. So here is the Sense device. And I don't know if everybody's house in Florida, but at least in our subdivision, we have 2 load centers. We have one on the outside of the house, which probably has anywhere from 4 to 12 circuit breakers. And then the main power cables go into the garage wall to the main load management center, which has probably 40 circuit breakers or something like that. I haven't counted them all. And what this does is it installs on the outside, and you can see that it has 2 circuit breakers here that pick up the main power.
Circuit breakers, those are current sensors.
I mean, 2 sensors, excuse me, sensors. These are ferrite cores on a spring loaded. And then you have the 2 solar. Then this is designed for the solar that comes in from its own inverters. And let's see, what are they doing? They're just stepping you through with instructions on how to install it. And it's pretty good. You can also put the app on your phone, which you're going to use anyway for monitoring, and it'll walk you through as well the installation, as well as this. This is the installation panel.
So
And they
Mike,
say,
if you didn't have solar, you wouldn't use this device because it's for somebody who's like you who has solar, right?
No, if I didn't have solar, but I'd still want to know where's my electricity going and what are the high use items in my house. So, and the artificial intelligence, I'll show a little bit of that. The artificial intelligence of the unit, of the sense unit itself, looks at the pattern of electrical use to determine what devices might be using it. Like it can pick up motors, it can pick up a coffee maker. That's interesting. It's it's a heating element, and the heating element goes on and off once the coffee's made, and you get a unique pattern. So, and it also does sharing in the cloud of what you have and what everybody else has, so that as you build the database of devices, if somebody else enters in that they've got a Mr. Coffee model NX whatever, then they start building up, okay, this is what it looks like, and this is in all likelihood what everybody with this particular Mr. Coffee model so-and-so has, and it identifies it very quickly. I've had it running for a week now, and I only have 5 devices or 4 devices identified.
It looks like a big amp probe where the data is fed to, a smart device that can tell small variations in the magnetic field that
Correct.
transfers over to current draw.
Correct. Now they do say that this should only be installed by an electrician. Luckily, I managed to bribe the electrician that was installing my generator. And I said, I would very, very much like to have this installed while you've got this transfer switch open and you've got the space in there to do this. And initially his position was, well, I'm working for the company. This will probably take a couple hours. I'm really not supposed to do that. But as we developed a working relationship over the 6 weeks it took from the start of the project to the end of the project, he said, yeah, I'll come back and do that. So he did, and then I tipped him.
It took 6 weeks to get your generator installed?
Even longer, but yeah, about 6 weeks.
Wow.
Have you seen my previous presentations where I showed my submarine coming out of the ground? You probably didn't see that. Yeah. I've done that before. If we run out of things to talk about, I can come back and show that at the end. All right, so all this is pretty straightforward. I mean, I could have done this myself. I mean, you just clamp your sensors and hook it up. It's got a Wi-Fi. The interesting thing in the setup is Bluetooth is built into this as well, and it's used only for the setup. Typically, I'm used to devices that are, Internet of Things, that have their own internet hotspot with their own internet IP address, and then you log into it, and then you tell it what network to connect to, and it looks around and sees the networks, and you put in your SSID and your encryption code. This one you connect via Bluetooth, and you do all of the setup on Bluetooth through your app, and then it switches to Wi-Fi and turns the Bluetooth off, and you don't use it again, which I found interesting. So again, most of this is pretty straightforward. They just tell you how to walk through. Once it's all done, you turn the power on and it goes ding dong ding, and you know that you're hooked up and you're running. Then you can put the app on your phone, and they don't tell you that they have a website as well, which basically shows you most of what's on the app. And I found that out when I got my welcome to Sense. So here is the Sense screen that is I'm currently connected to it on my computer. It's live. Oh, the coffee maker just popped in there, 923 watts, just popped in. You can see it still hasn't identified, and the coffee maker just went off. It hasn't identified 1.3 kilowatts of things that are on, and also 1.2 kilowatts of things that are on. Now these always on, we've got fans, we got lights, we got all kinds of stuff in the house. So I'm hoping it'll start to identify these things. And what I'm going to be doing is monitoring and you know, when I have spare time, turning things on and off, trying to get them out of this always on and into other. Because once it's in other, it'll identify things. And you can see over here.
Surprised it doesn't show your air conditioner.
No, well, it did pick up. Let's go to devices. It did pick up AC. Now, what it did, it said, we think this is AC. And I looked at it and like, here's what it did today. So I guess when it first started cooling, why it had that much use at 12 in the morning, I have no idea.
Sounds like a water heater.
I don't think, well, it could be.
Well, I'm guessing
I have-
because
I have-
$672 a year, estimated
Yeah.
cost per year, that's
Yeah.
not doing it when you're paying $300, $400 a month for electricity.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
maybe
was,
You don't now.
no, I don't now. That's correct. And I have put in my 13 cents a kilowatt hour for usage. And what it gives you when you're running solar, like today, you can see where solar cut in.
Mhm.
Okay, so about 6 something this morning, the solar came up, and I'm using this much electricity overnight. And the solar came in, and then it exceeded what I was using, and it's still solar is still exceeding. Then I started using more electricity than solar, and I had a worker crew here with some pretty heavy equipment that was using electricity during that period of time. And then here's midday where my solar is definitely outpacing what I'm using. And then it got cloudy this afternoon. My solar dropped off, as you can see. So for today, at 13 cents a kilowatt hour, I spent $8 on electricity so far today, and I produced $4 worth. So my net would be $4.
That's great.
And let's see, it has a meter. So what we're looking at right now is 15-minute intervals. And because the coffee pot is on almost all day, I can't talk Joyce into turning it off. I said, let me put the coffee in a vacuum mug or vacuum canister. And she said, no, I prefer just being in the pot. So anyway, I know that this is the coffee pot coming on and off. And I can do that by the hour. And then if I go back, this is solar right here, this lower line. So you can see I'm definitely using more electricity my solar is producing. But if I go back to where it was sunny, there we go. So now the sun was in and out of the clouds. But here, I know this was during a period of time that these guys were out there using their equipment. They were using an angle grinder and a reciprocating saw quite a bit. But here again, you can see all these little blips, I'm sure, are the coffee pot. And that's what they do, is they look for these on-off signatures to try to identify devices. You can get trends because I'm in a network there, and I've put in the 2,100 square foot house, and I put in my address and my zip code. So they're saying similar homes in your area, this is what they should be doing. And if they have Sense installed, we have information that says, okay, in the last 30 days, I'm using 2931 so far on a daily basis. And Sense homes are using 28. So I'm using more. But if they're all Sense homes in the United States, I'm using less, or I'm using much more. So again, there's things that I would like to actually look at and see what I can, I've got a lot of always on stuff that I can probably turn off. One of the interesting things I did find was the home theater amps. And I'm going to start turning that on and off and see if I can't get it identified. I have a home theater amp here in the office, Denon, and I have a home theater amp in my family room. So when I turn my panel on, which is an older Sony, and the home theater amp comes on, that uses a lot of electricity. And I found that by keeping them off, I was lowering my electric bill by about $5 a month. So I'm trying to consciously turn everything off when I'm not in there. Questions?
Yeah, Mike, how many panels do you have, and what's the total wattage it's capable of producing on really sunny days?
All right, let me go to that.
Oh, I just thought maybe that was something you know off the top of your head, probably.
No, but I got it. Here we go. Oh, that's not good. Come on. The network is down. All right, so let's go back to, it's easier for me to count panels.
Oh,
Let's see if I can do, this may show it. Okay, so they're putting this up. I'm pretty sure I've got the, all right, so this is the original. So I did it in 2 phases. This one was 2017. So it's over 3 years ago. And it was with the Seminole County Solar Co-op. This is a south-facing roof, and this is an east-facing roof. And these are 280-watt panels each. So there's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. It's 28, looks like 28 panels. And then 2 years later, let's try that again. Should be solar. That cut my electric bill by about 150 to 200 a month. Here we go. So here they are coming back in and adding more panels below it. And these are 350 watt panels, if I remember correctly. They're a larger panel. So we're putting in more below on the south facing side. Then we're putting in a row on the east facing side, and we're filling up this side of the roof. So you can see them going in here and putting all the racks in for it. And let's see if I've got a shot of the, I thought I had a shot of the whole thing. I guess I don't, in this group of pictures, I don't have the full, but I'm pretty close to, without that readout, I'll post it later, but I'm pretty sure I'm close to 8 or 9 kilowatt panels with the whole system running.
cool.
Somewhere in that
Hey, Mike?
neighborhood. Yes.
So I have 2 questions. First one is, do you have batteries, or do you supply power to the power company and then they even it out?
No batteries.
No
The
batteries,
reason
okay.
the reason I didn't go with batteries was cost. Back when I first started, Tesla had only begun to think about a power wall. We knew they were developing it, but it wasn't anywhere near what it is today. And for me to go batteries back then without the generator, I'd be looking probably between $15,000 and $20,000 to set up a lead acid bank. Plus, this is probably a good one to look at. These are micro inverters, okay? And on the new panels, each micro inverter will convert from DC to AC 4 different panels. And the original one, my micro inverters were 2 panels per micro inverter. So the electrical connections on the side of the house are just connection boxes with circuit breakers. I don't have an inverter on the side of the house. So until this year, I'm pretty sure early 2020, in order to have a battery integrated with your solar, it required what's known as a string inverter. It's one big inverter box that sits on the side of your house. And I didn't want to go that route. If the inverter fails, that's it. You're out of business. This way, at least either the 2-channel or the 4-channel, if an inverter goes, the other panels are producing. And I have already had a 2-channel inverter fail. They just came out and replaced it under warranty. Everything else continued to run.
How long is the warranty?
10 years in terms of parts and labor, and 18 years for parts. So that's not bad.
And what happens when it's time to change your put a new roof on?
About $2,000. They got to take it off, obviously. So I had my roof inspected before we started. We had replaced everything with 45-year fiberglass shingles after Charlie, Francis, and Jean. That was 2004, 2014, 2019. So they told me I had at least half my roof's life left at that point, and that there was no sense re-roofing. So I'm in pretty good shape on the roof. And your other question was, why didn't I go batteries? So the cost, it was about $15,000 in addition to the cost of solar to go batteries back then. Interestingly enough, the cost has remained about the same. There's a new set of 2 different companies now are making microinverters that are compatible with batteries. And you still need a box on the side of the house. It's a very complex transfer switch, which also would have to be combined with the transfer switch for the Generac. And the company I'm using, Superior Solar, I went ahead with and had them provide the generator as well. They just got into the generator business starting last November. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them primarily because I wanted all my warranties with one company. And they are now also a Powerwall dealer. So what they're proposing is a combined 3-point system: solar, Tesla Powerwall, and generator. And your house now becomes 100% independent of the grid, even though the state of Florida requires you to connect to the grid. But you can. Oh, really? Yeah. You can have solar charging your batteries. Like right now, as it's getting dark, we'd be transferring the electrical from the battery to the house, and it would run on battery overnight, and then solar again to recharge it. And then generator pops in if you lose the utility completely. So that's the concept behind it anyway. But I would have paid about another $15,000, and I'm not going to pay another $15,000 on top of everything else.
Right. Why is there? Do you know any idea at all why the state of Florida requires that you're on the grid?
Has to do with lobbyists and the Public Service Commission. The idea, they will tell you, if you ask, they will tell you that we can't have solar putting electricity into the grid if the grid is down because it might electrocute the workers. And to that, I say BS. And if you think about it, the same thing should apply to a generator, should it not? Well, it's very simple. If you have a generator and the grid is down, a transfer switch isolates the generator from the grid. Well,
Right.
if the power went down and your solar was producing, you should have a transfer switch, separate you from the grid, and the solar just continues to power your house. But if all you do is get solar, like I was doing before the generator was putting in, and the power goes out, can't use that electricity for anything. Even with my generator, I can't use it for anything. I would have to have batteries and have it only charge the batteries. That's all I'm permitted to do under state law.
Thank you.
Mike, when you were talking about your solar panels, I was doing some calculations, and I got up to nearly 10,000 watts of power that your solar's panels put out. 10,000 watts is enough to run two separate zones of air conditionings plus refrigerators and everything. So your electricity cost during the day should be like zero.
And if were it not for the clouds today, during the day, 100% of the load of this house would have been covered by solar. The very first thing we started doing is, to start with, I like the way Duke Energy calculates their what they call net metering. Duke Energy for net metering every month looks at kilowatt hours produced and subtracts that from kilowatt hours used. And in most cases, it's less. So your electric bill goes down. Okay, when are we going to wash the clothes? About 10:30 in the morning to noon to 1 o'clock. Take advantage of the sun, especially with an electric dryer. That's a good idea. When are we going to take showers? Well, when the sun's shining, hopefully, because I also have a solar hot water heater, which we put in a long time ago. But I think about all the things that I use electricity for and try to do as much, including charge my plug-in hybrid, and do that while the sun is shining. And the reason for that is essentially it's costing me about 13 cents on average per kilowatt hour. So if I can offset what I'm doing around the house, then I'm getting 13 cents per kilowatt hour for what I'm producing. Now, if I produce more on a monthly basis than what I have used, then it goes into a bank. And at the end of the year, they will send me a check. But the check they send you is only about 3.5 cents per kilowatt hours. So it makes sense to get your system sized such that it just offsets the electricity that you're using during the day, if you can. And that's essentially what we did. You know, my original plan back in 2017 was to get estimates from at least 5 solar suppliers. And then I learned about the Seminole County Solar Co-op, and I was one of the people on the selection board for it. And when we got bids, both the bids I got and both the bids that the Solar Co-op got for, let's just say, a 6 kilowatt hour or 6 kilowatt system, all the suppliers had to bid on a 6 kilowatt system. That ranged anywhere from $15,000 to $45,000 for the exact same thing. Maybe different manufacturers, maybe using microinverters or a string inverter, but the range was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they're still sending people door to door. There was somebody coming by yesterday trying to get me to go solar. I said, look up on my roof, idiot. But it's the Wild West when you get quotes for electrical systems. So I just basically said to Superior Solar, once they won the contract, they said, okay, to totally offset your bill, 45 grand. I said, nope, not going to do that. I'm not going to spend 45,000. I want to take out a loan. I said, I've got 15,000 in the bank that I can spare. What can you do for 15 grand? Oh, we don't work that way. I said, well, you want to work with me? You'd work that way. So they priced out a $15,000 system for me. That was a little bit over, but that's basically what I got. And then a year and a half later, Seminole County had another solar co-op, and I had another 15 grand in the bank. So I did the exact same thing, and turned out the addition prices had gone down, even with the tariffs on Chinese equipment or wherever these things are made. And I think my second increment was somewhere around 12. So, and I know that if I had gone to some of these guys coming around the neighborhood, they would have wanted me to spend about 20.
So you feed directly back into the grid. Your solar
Anything I don't use during the day goes into the grid. That's correct. Anytime looking at that Sense display, anytime that the orange solar graph is higher than the green usage graph, I don't know, I would have reversed them, but anyway, that's the way they got it. That's going into the grid, and the meter is a digital meter, and the display shows us kilowatt hours used, kilowatt hours produced.
And if the grid goes down, where does the solar go?
If the grid itself goes down, the solar just shuts off. It has sensors because of the state law.
And that's what you were talking about before.
Yes, it has sensors in the micro inverters or the big string inverter to sense that the grid is down, and the solar shuts off.
So now you don't care. Now you don't care because the generator will come on.
Well, now that's true, but you can go to YouTube and you can find ways to get in there and, for example, take a 12-volt power supply and an inverter, which will provide 120 volts to your microinverters, and the system will come up and it'll start producing electricity. You disconnect it from the grid and you'll be able to use it.
Really?
With a battery, yeah. It's an inverter.
Yeah, just what you use in a car. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
The inverters themselves use about 9 watts of power. In fact, that was one of the first things I noted on my Sense system, because I didn't see that on the.
Is there any regulation? Well, before you do that, is there any kind of regulation to keep the voltage?
Yeah, it's against the law for you to do that.
Not to do it.
Not that they're going to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to have frequency regulation and voltage regulation.
You've got that. You've got that coming out of the inverters from the roof. The panels produce DC, and then a microinverter changes that to 220 volts AC, brings it down.
And they're probably all phase locked together. They would have to be phase locked.
Yeah,
together.
I'm pretty sure.
You'd expect they'd have to be.
Yeah, they are. Yep. Okay, I've occupied enough time. Let's see, did I turn off my screen? Yes, I did. Okay.
Mike, one other question. How long are you expecting those solar panels to last?
That 18 years is the magic point. If you research online guarantees for solar panels, you'll see that the standard is to quote it in terms of percent performance to 18 years, and I think it's something like 80% performance at the 18-year point, and it does degrade beyond that. So you'll be looking, at 25 to 30 years, you'll be looking to replace it. I'm 78 now, and 25 to 30 years from now, I don't think I'll be worrying about replacing my solar panels. My wife's a realtor, and she says on average with a system like ours, you can figure anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 increase in the asking price of a home if it has solar. So,
Hey, Mike.
yep.
How, I know you, when you feed into Duke Energy, how are they tabulating how much power you're feeding into the system? Is there something on your pole that's measuring that, or?
It's a net metering power meter. So as part of the installation, as soon as you get your electrical permit approved, signed off by the inspectors, then the supplier petitions Duke Energy or Florida Power, as the case may be in this area, to come out and swap out the meter.
Ah,
So they swap the meter out, and it's got about 8 different screens that flash alternately, and it's designed prior to the solar. They had swapped our meters about a year or so before to put us on these remote monitoring meters so they didn't have to come out and read it anymore. But a net metering meter requires additional equipment for two-way communication. And that equipment hasn't been installed. The infrastructure has not been installed. So I'm back to having a monthly meter read. So they'll come out. I've actually put a label on the meter. Please read screens A and B. This is a net metering meter. Because the first couple of times they're only recording the power used and not the power generated. But they know now. The meter readers out here know to get that.
yeah,
But that's how they do it. It's the meter itself.
I just got a new meter on my house. They swapped all the meters in the neighborhood, and they said that they were converting to a mesh network.
Right. But they'll have to convert again if you go solar.
My roof is completely facing south. That would be a prime candidate for solar.
Yeah, I would say for somebody that's trying to budget, if you can do it in $15,000 increments and save yourself from having to you know, the companies are just like the auto dealers. They want you to take out a loan with them, okay? And there are some special good rates for solar loans, but they also are paying a premium to the dealers that, you know, that place you, and that's money out of your pocket one way or the other. So we just had money that we had been setting aside, and I looked at it this way. In fact, Tom Alt isn't with us tonight. He was one of the first of us that did this in the house that he built. Very energy efficient, and this was back when the state was offering incentives. And he sat by the telephone, you know, as soon as they opened up the state's incentive line. And he was one of the first people that got, in addition to the federal incentives, also got state incentives for putting solar up on his roof. And he says it pays for itself. You can't invest in a bank. Well, you can't invest in a bank anyway, but you can't invest in a bank and for 15 grand and save somewhere between $150 and $250 a month, every month, for that $15,000. That's just the way I look at it. To me, it's an investment. And it's less money out of my retirement pocket.
There you go.
That's the other question nobody asked me is what's the recovery period? What's the payoff period? How many years to get back my close to $30,000? And my answer is I don't care. I don't know.
Yeah, don't look too close at that, huh?
No, it's just nice not having that energy bill every month. The lowest I've had so far was $85 in February.
That's great.
I could do another $15,000 increment on the west side of the house, catch the afternoon sun with a little bit on the south, but that's facing the street, and I just don't feel it's worth it at this point.
What are you running this time of year?
Right now, about 130. And my average summer electric bill in this house, built in 87, was about 400 and something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very inefficient home.
Yeah, mine too. Same thing. Well, mine was built about the same time yours was, wasn't it?
87.
Yeah, we looked out here.
And I've had Duke come out and do the energy assessment things where they go up in the attic and check the depth of your insulation. Biggest problem is what's in the walls. You
Yep.
know, I just don't think there's enough insulation in the walls. The windows are double pane, but they're not argon double pane. And I think is it Arvin that talked about sealing his attic? I don't recall. But you know, there's a way to insulate your attic, not with fiberglass or cellulose, but where you actually seal everything off with the insulation up in the rafters in the beams, and you close all of the vents, the ridge vents, and the vents on the side, and you basically and you foam it, and then your attic is as cool as the house is below it. And that really improves the energy, but I didn't want to do that either. That's a big output.
Have you got a two-story house or a one-story house?
One.
That might be a good deal. I didn't think about that. I listened to Arvin, but I didn't think about that till you just mentioned it. Because I got a two-story house, so my actual insulation part of above my house is pretty small, on half the house. That might be worthwhile.
There's a lot on the internet that talks about ways of improving the insulation in your attic and redoing it. I've seen some interesting YouTube videos of guys that are actually using their attics as another room because it's now the same temperature as the house is.
They had a video many years ago of this company that was going into the attic and they were spraying this stuff on the roof, in the attic on the roof. And they were saying that it completely insulated the roof completely. And I haven't seen those advertisements in many years now, but they were around for a long time and they sprayed some kind of stuff. I don't even remember if it was black or white on the roof. And they said, now you're, no more heat transfer from the outside sun through the roof.
And you got to watch the foam you use as well, because there's also been problems with formaldehyde outgassing of some of the foams. I think you want to make sure it's a vegetable foam, based foam. And I did some research on it last fall, but I just decided no. Well, if Duke says I've got enough energy, enough insulation up there for this house, and if I actually can get below $100 a month on my electric bill, that's good. And maybe with this Sense thing, and once I've identified all the sources of electrical use in the house and start cutting back, I can probably get another $25 off the monthly consumption. Just think about the stuff that's on right now. I know for a fact, like I haven't printed with my HP printer all day. And it's been on since I turned the computer on this morning. Okay, so that HP has a parasitic draw, probably only a couple of watts, if a whole watt, but it's on 24/7. And then I've got a Brother color printer, which I know keeps heaters on those fusers. And when Joyce turns her computer on, that thing comes on because it's on the power strip. And that's on all day long, plus her multifunction printer is on. And as I said, I've got two amplifiers, two home theater amplifiers. One's in here that's on right now with this computer. And when I left the family room, I didn't turn the TV and the home theater amp off. So it's, in the time that I'm in here, it's probably drawing maybe 50 cents, who knows, 75 cents. But just multiply that times 30 days and you get all these things that are on consuming electricity in your house. that if you had it under control, and I know Sean has been working on, home automation. If you've got some of the apps and some of the devices, the hubs and things, where you can put schedules on your smart equipment to come on at certain times and off at certain times. Just the fact of having lots of things off that would otherwise be on, I would think would save you, who knows, $5-10 a month. Oh no, and I just have to figure it out in wattage that's consumed.
What are you in the temperature in your house, Mike?
78 according to the thermostat.
Yeah,
And I used to think that was hot, but the point is, it's more the humidity in the house. My humidity is about 40%.
Yeah.
So I'm very comfortable at 78.
Yeah. Well, we use 78 during the day and 75 at night. So if we can be comfortable under the electric blanket.
That's what we use.
I'm kidding you not.
We use that also, about the same numbers, and we go down to 74. Of course, it's 1 degree and, different house, different, but if it was up to my wife, she'd push it down to the basement.
That's right.
What's the recommended? I haven't researched this. I've considered getting a dehumidifier. What's the recommended humidity in a home before you start dealing with things like electric?
I think 35,
electricity.
35-40%. Our biggest problem's in the winter. We've got the heat pump side of the air conditioning system, but if it goes below 30 degrees, which it has in the past,
right,
you're starting to use electrical resistive elements to heat the house. And when we first moved in, I was used to having humidifiers in the air handling system, and they didn't do that down here. So we actually put one in because it would get so dry that you'd have static electricity all over the place.
It does in the winter, yeah.
And you really don't want, below 20% humidity in your house if you can do away with it. 15% is a desert. So I'm comfortable at 40%. It's the lowest I can set my air conditioning system to. And then I have this little thing that I got off of Amazon that just shows me temperature and humidity, which sits in the kitchen. So I've got another reference to compare to what the thermostat is showing me.
So you had a dehumidifier installed within your air handler?
Originally, yes. We've since, after the big hurricanes of 2004, we had lots of damage up in the attic, which included ductwork being torn up and water all over the place. And we had an inefficient air conditioning system anyway. And we had to sue our insurance company, and we won. Thank you, Morgan & Morgan. And so we had enough money to totally replace everything. And the old system had the dehumidifier, but when we opened it up, it was totally corroded. Lots of calcium deposits, and there was mold. And I just said, all right, we'll live without it. So.
Let me make an interesting comment about dehumidifiers, and this is for what Sean was asking about. We had one. I bought a really nice dehumidifier. It was, about 1.5 feet square, about 3 feet tall. Sat in the living room. During the summer, the wife wanted it on to dehumidify the house in the summer. But what it does, it puts out a tremendous amount of heat. The amount of heat that came out of that thing was just tremendous. So I got the air conditioning running, trying to cool the house down. And this thing is just putting out tons of heat, dehumidifying the house. So, I just quit using it, eventually sold it on one of the, not eBay, but one of the newspaper sites probably. And I couldn't wait to get rid of it. It was just like a heat. That's how you get humidity. It's got heat coils in there. You have to heat up the air to get rid of the humidity. And yeah, it did, but it got the house hot. So just something to consider.
How long ago was that, Paul?
Oh man, it was years ago, 5+ years ago, at least. 5, 6, 7, 10 maybe.
Okay.
Most
I wonder if the
most
technology has changed at all on that.
most heat pumps dehumidify anyway. How old is your system, Sean?
Around 2004, I believe. It might be late 90s. It's pretty old.
Yeah,
Well, they all humidify because you're
that's
cooling
true.
heated air. So it just
But
depends on how big a unit you have.
the newer units will actually have cycles of the compressor and the condenser, sort of semi-smart cycles, so that maybe you don't need to lower the temperature, but they're running at a lower setting anyway in order to condense water out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Okay.
get a new air conditioner, if you replace your air conditioner, you'll find the new ones are much, much more efficient than an older one.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are.
You'll save a lot of money.
And that'd be
Part
the
of-
outside unit, right? The part that sits outside of your house.
Well, they all work together. Typically, an AC
they're not
company
gonna-
is going to want to have you replace both the air handler and the compressor.
Right.
Yeah, the
Won't get-
compressor is the expensive part, though, really.
You won't get the efficiency out of the outside unit, the compressor, if you don't change the air handler with it. And most air
Okay.
conditioning companies are not going to change the outside unit if it craps out. You can
Okay.
force them to do it, but they're not going to, they're going to tell you this is a really bad decision, because I just went through that a year and a half ago. My unit was 33 years old. The compressor was still working, but the reversing switch that reverses the freon from that makes the evaporator go hot in the winter, that switch, which is a magnetic switch, it froze. So the freon wasn't going anywhere. And this was in the summertime in June. So
Of course.
it was a very cool June. I was very lucky. I turned on all the other units I had in the house. I had some other window units, and kept the house reasonable for a few days while they came and replaced everything. But I can tell you right now, and I wouldn't have believed if I didn't see it, my air conditioning bill did go down. I mean, because this thing runs all the time. It definitely, I was getting $400 a month in the summer, July and August.
Yeah, that's
After
about what I'm getting.
And after they replaced that, I don't think I've pushed through $300. Maybe I got close to it once last year, but
That's great.
it made a big difference.
We had a new carrier system put in. I think it was SEER 16 after Charlie or Gene, whatever. And it had a 10-year warranty on the compressor. And at 9 years and 11 months, the compressor failed. So they came out and they said, okay, carrier will offer you a $500 incentive to replace your whole system. I said, well, how much to replace the compressor? And they said, well, you'll only have a 1-month warranty left because that's what's left on it. I said, yes, but then I'm getting a new compressor. Well, it may be overhauled. I said, I don't care. Replace the compressor. So they did. My electrical bill went down $25. So that tells you either the new compressor was more efficient, or over that 10-year lifetime, the compressor itself's performance degrades.
The compressor is the part that sits outside?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm on my second compressor. I'm, let's see, that was 17, 18. So that was 3.5 years ago. And they, once again, the company wanted me to keep about a $300 maintenance policy going, twice annual visits, come in, clean it, do all the rest of this stuff. And finally I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I mean, it's working fine. And they said, well, if you don't keep it up, then you won't be under warranty anymore. I said, I don't have a warranty. I said, well, yeah, but you could get your $500 incentive for a new system if you keep it up. I said, yeah, but in 2 years, I've spent $600. So anyway, the bottom line is if I have a service call, I'll call an AC guy. And I figure the next time it fails, I'm just going to replace the whole thing. So,
And you can clean that yourself.
and I can clean it myself. That's right.
We put in a brand new air conditioning. We put in a new air conditioning system a little over a year ago. It almost cut our power bill in half. And
Yeah,
right now in this room, the humidity is 38%.
There you
And
go.
I'm at 80 degrees, which I'm fine with. I got a fan going. Ever since I lost all that weight, I don't need all that air. But my wife does. But
Oh boy.
right now, my bill just went from 100. I pay a flat rate every month, and it's adjusted once a year. And all the end of last year and up until last month, this month rather, is $130 a month, and now it just jumped to 140.
How many square feet of your house?
Right, just almost 1,800. Almost 1,800. Now, one side of my house is attached to another one, but this was built in '57. It's a townhouse all on one floor.
Oh, okay.
But I did have Duke come out, and they did the insulation, and it was late on a Friday afternoon when the guys got here, and they had so much in their truck, they dumped it all. And I mean, I hate to have to try to get it that attic right now. So, but I did put in new windows several years ago, and that made a big difference.
Yeah, AC can definitely make a difference here in Florida.
Yeah.
Stan, back to you.
Yeah,
Who's next?
let's move on to some computer stuff. Who wants to go next? Somebody.
I'll go next, but I don't have any computer stuff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I know that Sean has some experience with this, and I think some of the others of you do too. Bob Dolph's not with us, but I think he probably has some opinions as well. But I'm looking to put an electronic door lock on my front door. And I've waited a long time. I've listened to other people, and I've thought about how I want this
All
to
right,
work.
Alex, just a minute.
What's that? Okay. Anyway, I don't have I can't go the Cadillac version, so you know, $300 or even $250. But I was looking to do something for probably $150 or less, and I was looking for recommendations on. I've seen a lot of them that connect to like Zigbee, and I've heard that discussed in the past with other products. But I'm thinking if I'm going to connect at all, I probably should be able to. You know, use Alexa or HomeKit or something like that if I want to use my phone at all. A lot of them appear in the $100 range where they don't connect to anything; they just are electronic. But I was just looking for recommendations.
So the one that I purchased is a little bit above your price range, although you could probably look for sales. But it's called Level, and
Okay.
it replaces the mechanism inside the lock. So it doesn't. You can use your existing door lock.
Well, that's the problem.
No one.
I have to replace the whole thing.
So you've got a bad lock.
Yeah, it's old and it's time to replace it. And so
Okay.
I'm looking for more security, but if I'm going to go to an electronic lock, I did see when you posted that. It's only been about a month or two because you showed all the instructions on how to do it, and it did look like it was very doable. But
Definitely. You know, if I looked at it as an investment in my home. And we have our locks, all of our locks when I moved in here, which is probably 6 or 7 doors and so forth. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I have 6 doors with deadbolts and a handle lock. And they're all Schlage, and I had them all rekeyed with one key when I moved in, which was a fairly costly endeavor, but it's been great. I've only got one key for all my property, and I didn't want to have to get a different key. Which, if you're replacing one lock and they only have that one key for that door, then who cares, right? You're just gonna just get a replacement. But we like it too, is that you can't tell that it's a smart lock. Jeff, since you're a Mac user or an Apple user, I would recommend that you look for something that is HomeKit compatible. Do you have a newer version of the Apple TV?
I do. Okay. I don't think it's a 4K, but I think it's the generation 3 or 4.
The tall one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that can work. Have you set that up yet as your HomeKit?
No, we haven't, because we don't have anything that works on HomeKit.
Okay. So
but been looking
that you
forward.
will possibly. That you can turn that on at any time, even if you don't have anything that is in there yet. And then once you get your new lock, you can then join that after setting the lock up. What we did is I set the lock up with the app that came in that you can download from the App Store. Once I had it working within the app, then I went ahead and joined it to HomeKit. But it offers some features that you may not really think about until you have it. And I'm sure this is the same with pretty much all locks. One of the nice things is when we arrive home, our door unlocks for us, which is one of my favorite things. Of course, my Apple TV in this case as the hub. It also works. You can also do. You can get ones that are Zigbee or Z-Wave. I also have that Smart Things, which is Zigbee and Z-Wave. But once you enter the geofence, either me or my wife enter the geofence, the door will unlock. So it's very handy if you come home with groceries or whatnot. I'm not sure if that's your primary door, but that's something to consider, is having a lock that is smart enabled with a phone and having it being able to talk to a hub with the geofence. I do know that the Alexa, I'm pretty sure the Alexa is a Zigbee hub, especially the newer ones. I have an older one that is not, but like the Echo Show, I think the newer version of the Echo Show is a Zigbee hub. So you can add it to that. And that, I believe the Amazon Alexa app can sense where you're located. If you enter as geofence, it'll unlock the door in that case. But I highly recommend the level lock. But you could. I'm sure there's plenty of articles with regards to locks and what they can connect to. But I would recommend something that's HomeKit compatible.
Well, I wish the Apple Store was open. I could go look at what they have in the store, but it's not open yet. Not back open yet. I have one other question. I appreciate that advice. I'd listen to anybody else too, but I'll direct this to Sean. In the minutes of our last AppleSig meeting, you indicated you would not be at our next meeting, but I was wondering if we delayed that meeting by 1 week, would you be back in town? Would you be able to do that, or you gonna be gone a while? Oh, can't hear you.
I might be able to make that meeting after all, because I'm going to be I'm just going to be on vacation, just a beach vacation. So I'm going to be sitting around a lot. So I think I can probably do that after all.
Well, Mark and I were debating whether to just cancel it or change the date, but let us know.
Wait, let me look at the calendar. That is the 18th?
I think it's the 17th or 18th.
17th. That's my wife's birthday. Yeah, I can't make it.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking if we delayed it by 1 week to the 24th, would you be able to make that?
24th. Yeah, I can make the 24th.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about setting it up that way. Okay. But I appreciate any advice on this lock thing, and I'm just looking into it. I need to do something probably within a week or so.
Okay.
Thanks. That's all.
Okay, who would like to go next?
Dick.
Dick, go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple things. First one is not computer related. I had a Samsung DVD, Blueray DVD player, and I've been getting DVDs from Netflix. And one day I got a new DVD, put it in the player, and it said it wouldn't play it. And I said, what gives here? So I started investigating, and I found out that Samsung has basically abandoned its support of Blu-ray DVD players. They're still selling them, but they've abandoned support. And so they are not updating the software. And what I've discovered over time with DVDs, they seem to change some kind of security in DVDs, in movies these days. And every couple of years or so, they come up with a new update and you have to post. And this has happened in past times with the DVD player. It says, hey, we can't play that DVD. Wait a minute, we'll download the update and now you can play it. Well, Samsung's not doing that anymore. So I looked around and other people were making the same claim that their DVD players quit working, and nobody's been able to get any satisfaction out of Samsung. Then I saw a Forbes article which indicated that Samsung is just abandoning that market. So I went out and bought a new Sony player and everything's fine again. Okay, now a computer one. I decided a few weeks, well, a month ago, to rebuild my desktop computer. It's 10 years old, working just fine. It's got a Intel i7 Core i7 processor and all that sort of thing, running just fine, just a little bit slow. And I've, of course, accumulated a gazillion application programs that I put on, and I said, you know, it's time. Well, a couple things happened. First thing, I had replaced or added to my hard drive in the desktop a solid state drive to use as the system drive. And when I went through the process of trying to install Windows 10, first of all, you have to download it. It's not all that big a deal, but you download a copy of Windows 10 from Microsoft. And then when you go to install, it says, hey, can't do that. We don't like the drive you're trying to put it on. Well, I no longer remember what the normal formatting of a drive is, but there's also one, I think it's called GPT. And I found out that in order to do, well, in fact, that was the message that came up when trying to install Windows 10. It said it has to be a GPT drive. And so I started hunting around, and sure enough, there's a very simple process to convert whatever, the MRD or something like that to a
MBR.
Thank you, MBR to GPT, and took about 2 seconds, formatted the disk, and installed Windows 10. Well, that was hunky-dory, and except that the version of Windows 10 that Microsoft is putting out for this purpose happens to be 2004. So I am dealing with some of the issues that are causing problems with Windows 10 2004. Otherwise, it works fine. You know, everything's speeded up a good bit. Things seem happier. I lost no data. I had made a complete list of all the programs that I had previously installed. So I had that information. And if I had the software to install them, I noted what it was and where it was and so forth. So I did my homework ahead of time, backed up the system completely before I started, and it's been fine. But I just wanted to caution anybody that if you decide you want to reinstall Windows 10 on your computer, you might want to be aware that you're going to probably get 2004, and that may be a problem.
I'm not sure if they're archiving the older version or not. That's a good point. I mean, I've used the Windows downloader to download different installation archives, and I typically, when I do that, I save it in a folder in my downloads folder under Windows 10 archives. And I don't know if I have an older archive or not that would work. But you're right. If you go to the Windows download site to get Windows 10, which you can still do, even though they say you're not supposed to be able to, you can. You're going to get the latest version. Well, Huey had to do it, when he upgraded his computer too. And he used a couple of different utilities to help him, especially because he was using Outlook and he needed to recover a ton of Outlook files. The paid version of some of the partition managers will do what they call a cold iron restore. So if you have a nice clean image, and most of us have all kinds of junk in our images, but if you have a nice clean image, ESUS partition manager and then the Acronis disk director, I think. Both of those will do what they call cold iron, which essentially takes your image, gets the necessary installation files from Microsoft, and then theoretically put your old configuration into a current Windows 10 configuration on the new computer with the necessary drivers. Having said that, I still think it's a good idea just to start over from scratch and have a nice fresh copy of Windows.
It really helped.
I don't know, Stan, have you done some new installations of late?
I did one for a client last week, and it really came out very, very smoothly, no problems at all. And much faster, for sure.
I've upgraded all my computers to 2004, and they are fast compared to what they used to be.
That's
and
good.
they're one's an i3 and the other one's an i7, but they're 6 years old, 7 years old, and had zero problems with 2004.
Well, I have had an occasional problem. I've gotten updates to get around most of them, but I had one that started out yesterday that might interest you. I'm a subscriber to Consumer Reports, and Consumer Reports puts out periodic surveys where they ask you questions about products that you have in your home. And I was they just came out with the summer survey for 2020. And I was starting to complete the survey when I was doing the automobile section, and I got down to a point where they were asking a question. They said, pick one. Did you buy your car new or used, and so on and so forth. And I couldn't pick one of the options. It wouldn't allow me to pick any option in that regard. So I called consumers and said, hey, what gives? And they said, we haven't heard this before. Have you tried another computer? Well, I just happened to have another computer that was not running Windows 2004. It was running the prior version of Windows. And so I tried the survey on the other computer with the earlier version of Windows, and it worked just fine. So there it is.
Do you use Chrome or Firefox or any of that?
I did try changing browsers. That made no difference.
Okay, that's where I've had problems with Chrome update or Firefox or whatever.
I found that you really need to keep an assortment of browsers on your computer. And I have Chrome, I have Edge, I have Brave, I have Opera.
Yep.
I have Firefox.
Yeah, those are exciting.
Okay, let's move along. Sean, you got anything for us today?
I don't have a lot. I did talk about in the Apple SIG about a website called Zero Tier, some on this call may find it interesting. It's a piece of software that you install that puts a virtual network card onto your computer. It works with Windows, Mac, Linux. Actually, it works with some of the like Synology, the network attached storage. What it does is it gives you a virtual network card, and then you can put it on 2 or more devices. And you go to their website and you create an account, and then you create a network, and you join the network on each of your devices or all of your devices where you want to be able to connect. And it creates a secure, the zero-tier server, they call it a moon. I think it's called a planet. There's planets and moons, and then there's the devices. Anyway, you connect to the zero-tier server, and then it will hook up the connection, and then you're talking computer to computer. And it's secure, it's a tunnel type thing, kind of like similar, think VPN, but VPN is more of is a little bit different in that you're connecting to a network. In this case, you're just connecting computer to computer. And where it would be helpful is if you're out of your house, and say you want to connect to your file server, or you want to connect to something some particular computer or server at your house, you can do that it's just always running. You don't have to, you can turn off the network card, but as soon as you turn it on, it negotiates and finds it. And there's no username and password and all that. That's not necessary. So zero-tier, if you think that might be something that you could benefit from, I recommend it. It's free. It's open source, embedded by the community, so it's secure. I think that's it for me. And by the way, on the smart items, home smart stuff, I'm up to about 65 devices now, with it being bulbs and switches and washer and dryer and dishwasher and all those.
Now you need sense to see how much energy they're consuming.
Yeah, right. I've looked into Sense. That's a pretty big. You didn't mention the purchase price. It was about $300.
Right. I think there was a sale on Amazon at the time. Slick Deals pointed it out to me, and I saved $50. But yeah.
Okay.
It's around 300 and something.
Cool. My latest things that I purchased some of the Eufy. I have a Eufy doorbell, and there was a sale on the Eufy cameras. So I purchased 2 of those, and I like them. They're HomeKit compatible, so they show in my HomeKit in my device list and my favorites. So anyway, those are the couple things. Nothing, not a whole lot new here. So, thanks, Dan.
Okay. Gary, what have you been up to this past month?
Well, I just shipped an order of stilts to Universal Studios, so they're still buying stuff. So, but they said that they've shut down Halloween Horror Nights, anything to do with Thanksgiving, Christmas, all special events have been canceled. So they said expect leaner sales. But I guess the only thing computer related that I've done lately is I gave Bright House the boot, and I think I got a pretty good deal on my news service at the shop. Since I have AT&T on my cell phone service, if you bring in an internet service and tell them you have a cell phone for 100 megabits per 100 megabit service, it's $35 a month. And I'm happy with that. And now it's got a terabyte, 1 terabyte ceiling per month usage, but the last several months I'm only using 100 gigs, and the highest was 160 gigs. So I'm nowhere near 1 terabyte. And for $35 a month, I'm happy with it. And then I switched. So then I gave Bright House the boot at my house because they told me I was locked into $95 a month and I couldn't get a slower service or get a lower rate. So I gave them the boot. And now I can't get the $35 deal with AT&T because once you've locked your cell phone to a internet service, you can't double dip and do it again. You can only do it once. But that for the second account, it's $69 a month, and it's 100 megabit service. And the guy he came out and he even hooked up my Roku with a Ethernet cable from the router to my Roku. So I have a little bit faster service on the Roku now. But the deal is too, they charge you $100 to install it, but then they give you a debit card for $100 to wash out the cost of the installation. So it's a washout. You don't have to pay the $100 because it washes out. So that's about the only new thing I've got going with computers. Well, the latest thing is I found out on one of my my CNC program, I have 5 CNCs and they all run on Macintoshes. That there is a glitch in the software that if I just barely touch the trackpad, it causes a repeat key. And I called tech support and it says, you know what, you're going to have to use a mouse because we designed the software for mouses. We didn't design it for trackpads. So I got a little mini mouse and then a four port USB thing, and let's see who makes this. This is I don't see the name, but it has a swivel on USB, and so it works out real good with the CNC machines. So I don't use the trackpad anymore for doing CNC work. I've been converted to a mouse user. And that's it.
Quick question. Did you say there's a limit on the AT&T, there's a data cap on a per month basis?
Yeah, they say it's 1 terabyte.
Wow. Okay.
Did they run a cable into your house for that service?
Oh yeah, all the way from the street. They went all the way across the highway 50 and through the telephone poles, and I got all brand new cable. All brand new. It's they haven't dug it underground yet.
Is that optical or is that coax?
It's coax.
Coax.
Yeah, but
I'd like to get AT&T myself, but I've been trying to get it for 15 to 20 years, and they I got the copper lines. They never updated my neighborhood out here. I'm not in the sticks, but I'm a little bit rural. But
yeah.
Then they used to call me up on the phone. They say, "Would you like AT&T service?" And I go, "Well, you can't provide it to me." And they go, "Well, of course we can." I said, "Well, why don't you go check your database?" And they go, "Hold on." And they go, "I'm looking at my stuff right now. And, oh, we can't provide you with that service."
Yeah.
So I'm stuck with Bright House.
One of the things we learned about Bright House was at June 1st of last year, they stopped the prorating refund. So if, in my case, I was 2 months into my billing cycle. I was 2 weeks into my billing cycle when I canceled, and they will not prorate the unused service that I'm not going to use. And they stopped doing that June 1st of last year. Now, it's funny though, with AT&T, I canceled a landline and I had 1 week left, and you know, they sent me a check for like $15. You know, they prorated it, but Bright House will not, you know, if you're 1 or 2 days into a month and you cancel, you're paying for the whole month of no service, and they will not prorate and give you a refund.
Okay, so I have a different experience. I think we
Yes.
talked about this, Gary.
Yes.
So I am a Bright House customer, and I have been for many years. And I was always annoyed by the fact that they would send me new
Right.
subscriber mailings saying, "Hey, become a Bright House customer, and you get this price." And then I'm like, "That isn't the price I'm paying. I'm paying more than that." So I would call them, and they would say, "Oh, we're sorry, that's only for new subscribers."
Right.
Well, why did you send me this piece of paper then? And they could never answer. And I told them, at one point I told them, I'd like to go ahead and cancel that. It was about 2 months ago. And they said, "Well, we see you're using a cable modem from us, so go ahead and take that cable modem over to the store." Which, in my mind, that is a, you know, you can't even threaten at that point, because they just said, "We'll go to the store." Well, I'm not going to go to the store, right? At least not right then. But in the meantime, after those 2 months, I went ahead and bought a new cable modem. Oh, by the way, I have 2 buildings on my property. So I've got the house, and then I've got, my address is 824. I've got 824 and a half, and that's the address for the garage apartment where I'm sitting now. And they would send these mailings to the garage. So I decided I'm going to get service for the garage. And when I called them, I said, "I'd like to set up new service." And then he says, "Oh, okay." And I gave him my name and gave my address with the half address. They signed me up for, I got a guarantee of 2 years for 400 megabits at $64.99 per month.
Good.
And I got it all hooked up. I got it working. And then I took the old cable modem. Oh, I paid my bill online. I didn't know it, but I was a couple of days into this billing cycle. Not unlike Gary, actually worse, because he was 2 weeks in. I was only a couple days in, maybe 3 days. So I paid the bill. It was $110 I was paying a month. So I took the cable modem over to the store over at Bumby, and I handed it to him, and I said, "I want to cancel my bill. I want to cancel my service." And he looked and he says, "You're 3 days, I think it was, into your month, and we don't and I see you paid it, and we don't prorate."
Yeah.
I said, "So I'm out that money?" And they said, "Yeah." He said, "I would recommend that you call customer. You turn the cable modem in, but you don't cancel. That you call and cancel on the phone. And maybe he'll do something." He wouldn't guarantee it, of course, but he says call and ask for a disconnect, which I did on the way home in the car. I called on the phone on the steering wheel, and I said, "Hey, I want to cancel my service." And the guy his name was Cody. I won't forget him because he was fantastic. He said, "I'm sorry, why do you want to cancel?" I said, "Well, here's what happened. I just told you." He said, "You know, if you had gotten me, I would have given you that better deal." I said, "Well, whoever I got 2 months or, not too long ago," I didn't tell him how long. I said, "They told me to just take the cable modem back, and they didn't want to help me at all." He apologized, and he says, "You know what I can do? Let me see what I can do." He didn't go and ask anybody. He just did it. He said, "I see you just paid today. I'm going to refund that payment, and I'm going to wipe out any existing payment for this month." So the month prior, he gave me $110. He just canceled that payment, and then he canceled the payment for the current month. So I thought that was great recovery.
Yeah.
So and I'd like to share my screen real quick. I'm sorry, Gary. I took over that. Do you have anything else?
Well, yeah, I was going to say that when I called the disconnect, all of a sudden she was going to take $20 off my bill, so I wasn't really locked in. And then she wanted to pay off my brand spanking new AT&T contract, up to $500. She was going to pay that off. And I said, no. And she says, well, why would you say no? And I says, you know what? If a company is not willing to prorate unused service, I don't want anything to do with a company like that.
Good for you. Good for you.
Okay, John,
Yeah.
go for it.
Okay, so something that's really cool, and I won't take long. I know there's other people. We're an hour and a half into this, but let me share my screen. How do you do that here? Let's see.
You have to be made a co-host, and I'm looking to see if I got that as a co-host or not.
Oh, here's share screen. I got it.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, so where would I do that?
While Mike is looking, let me just say that Spectrum sends me those new customer postcards and letters twice a month. I've been a Spectrum customer for years. Twice a month, I get the stuff in the mail. I once called up about it, but now I just see it. I throw it in the recycle.
So the new AOL.
Yeah.
Well,
and my logic is, I've got this price is guaranteed from what I understand for 2 years. And at 2 years, the third year will be an extra $10. So it goes from in essence, $64.99. It goes to $74.99. And then at the fourth year, I'm at rack rate. But my logic is at 2 years, I already put it on my calendar. I will call them and I will switch the service back to the house. And I didn't move any equipment. They don't know. I'm doing it myself. So I just unplugged the old device and plugged in. So I happen to have, if you have more than one address for your property, that's a great workaround. I know, I realize that's unusual. I'm in an unusual situation, but I just thought of it and I thought, well, that's a great alternative. So, I guess Mike, you can't see where
I just don't, the way Huey set this up, let me see, allow participants to share screen. Let me see if that did it. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Okay, cool. So, let's see, share. Okay, so I'm going to go here. All right, let me minimize this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this is my gateway or my router. I'm going to log in here. And I've never seen this on a router before, but if I go under, I was able to install a package. And the package allows me to run a speed test. I just type the word speed test, hit execute, and it's waiting. It's actually doing something. You can see up here the kind of the gears going back and forth. This is Firefox. But in a moment, it will show the speed, the up and down or down and up speeds of my internet connection right in the router. And you want it to be something that's plugged directly into your modem, right? Most of my stuff is wireless. And then I've got a switch right behind the modem, but this is actually I've got a switch going into the router. So anyway, here you go. I can see my speed right within the router. This is plugged in directly into the back of that modem. So this is 406. Since I've started testing it, since I switched, oh, by the way, after I got the service, the 400 megabit service, I couldn't get anything over about 280.
On VPN.
And I tried, and it turns out I have a traffic shaper set up, and this helps with buffer bloat and so forth. If I go into traffic shaper under limiters on a WAN down, I had this set to 300. So I had my bandwidth tuned to my old connection speed. So shame on me, but I was able to find it, and I set that up to 500, and then the up I set to 35, just so I'm covered. So, but I've been very happy. I've never seen under 400. I had 480 this morning, so pretty good service. So anyway, thought you'd find that interesting. Thank you.
And what kind of router do you have again?
I have a Netgear. I think it's called an A1200, if I'm not mistaken. It's capable up to a gigabit. So if I wanted to go, there is a faster service. I think it goes from, I think there's a 100 megabit service, then there's a 400, and then there's a gigabit. And I think the gigabit would have been 85 a month. So anyway, I am now I can make that change at any time if I want to.
I'm still with Bright House or Spectrum these days, and I also have my home phone service. So I have a home phone as well as a cell phone. And one of the things that I've felt, I've not been able to find a cable modem that works with both the home phone and your computer network. So you're kind of stuck with getting your cable modem from Spectrum.
If you can keep your low spectrum service without the home phone, and that's the key, without the home phone, then you could go to anybody's voice adapter and then just plug your phones into it. I'm using an Obi-Hi, and I'm using just a standard Netgear cable modem. And when I divorced myself from television, they initially wanted to charge me $97 a month for 100 megabit service, and 125, I think, for the 400. And I said no. And I said, and that's too much. And we did our typical negotiation back and forth and back and forth. And I'm now 67 plus fees, which takes me up to about 69. And that seems to be grandfathered in. My fingers are crossed that they don't raise it again come this fall. But I'm getting those offers all the time. You know, $45 for internet, $45 for cable, $45 for telephone. But I can't get 45 for internet without getting 45 for telephone, or without getting 45 for television, which we don't care for. So
another option, the Obi-Hi is good, and that works with the Google. Is that what you're using, Google Voice?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another option, Dick, could be to get a Vonage phone service.
Yep.
And then you just pay once you purchase the equipment, you can plug it into your router. You can plug your cordless phones into the Vonage, and then you just pay tax, which is I think my folks pay about $4 a month for taxes in Illinois. It's probably cheaper here in Florida, but then you're not locked in. That was another thing. They tried to talk me into, Spectrum tried to talk me into getting cell service with them. They wanted me to do the VoIP like you have. And then they started talking about, well, you know, you can do Spectrum Mobile, which is a cellular service, which I've heard good things about. But I don't want. They're unscrupulous in their practices where they screw you over if you're a current customer. And I want the flexibility of being able to say, I'm leaving, and leave. And I'm not opposed to leaving.
That's why I like the option for Starlink if it comes down to our lower latitudes.
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, someday.
But your hands are now tied.
That's right.
Because they can raise your rates, and they don't do it big amounts, but they year after year they would trickle it up. I started out at about 85. When I left that service, I was at 110, and they did that over the course of a couple of years, maybe 3 years, and. But I was flexible because I don't have anything except internet with them. So I could go with Starlink maybe someday, but I could go with AT&T. I've got fiber now in the neighborhood. I've got some other options. So I would consider it. My folks love on it. They never have any problems with it, and it's gotten exceptional reviews. Maybe you have Consumer Reports, as do I, and they give Vonage a great rating. I think they were number one. So check it out.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of something. I think it was PC Magazine. I got a email from them saying, have you looked at your DNS recently? And it's a quick way to see if you've got your optimum source for that. So there's an open source program you downloaded. I think it was 2 megs. Took about 10 minutes. It tested all sorts of things, and it came up with 6 or 7 different candidates, and then compared them all. it was Paige Smith or something like that. I will send it out. It was on the computer upstairs. And I was amazed. It supposedly came up with a 50% increase in the throughput by changing to a different DMS.
In milliseconds?
50%?
In milliseconds.
It was 50% faster.
Time.
Yeah, but the problem is that 50% is in milliseconds, which is, you could blink your eye faster than 50 milliseconds.
Right.
It's just the amount of time your DNS takes is it's sanguine. It's nothing, zero.
Who's using specialized DNS and not the ones from their ISP? Just two of us?
I'll have to send out a report on what I did.
Yeah, I'd like to see that because I'd like to see the times. Even if it's a millisecond or if it's 200 milliseconds or 300 or 500 milliseconds.
I use a rough rule of thumb. If I ping like Google or Yahoo or something like that, and it takes 40 milliseconds, this came back 20 milliseconds in that range. It did it 4 times, and the average was about half of what it was using the DNS that I was using. But I don't remember. It's been a long time since I changed the DNS. How do you do that? Is that in the router?
You've got 2 choices.
In the router.
You can do it in the router, or you can do it on the device. Best is on the router.
Yeah.
For those not in the know, DNS is domain name service. And if you say, hey, connect me to google.com, what happens, most people, it defaults to your internet service provider. So you put in a request to go to www.google.com. It'll check on your computer first to see if you happen to have it set. Then it'll check in your router to see who your domain name service is. And it usually defaults to the ISP. Then it'll go to the ISP and says, hey, this guy wants to go to Google. Okay, Google is 206.45.133.25, whatever it is. It looks that up. And then it says, okay, to get there, here's the routing. And then it finds the routing and it gets you to the Google, and then it comes back. Now, what happens if somebody crashes your ISP, which happened about, I'm just guessing, 8-10 years ago? A lot of the smaller ISPs, hackers got in and did what's called poisoning of the lookup tables, the names providers. So let's say you were going to chase.com. Well, you didn't go to Chase. You went to Eastern Europe, and you went to a particular server that was over in Eastern Europe that a complete copy of what Chase landing screens would look like. Oh, well, there's my landing screen. Okay, type in your password and your thing, and it says, oh, sorry, can't enter. Oh, can't get in. Okay, whatever. I guess I can't get to Chase today. Well, meanwhile, they've now captured your login credentials to Chase, and so on. So the first I heard about all this was a company called OpenDNS. And if you Google OpenDNS, 208.67, I used to have it memorized. But OpenDNS provides one of the better sources for a clean database of server addresses for the whole internet. So OpenDNS is a highly recommended source. Another one, Arvin isn't with us tonight, but Google provides, and Google is 6.6.6.6, and I think 7.7.7, whatever it is. You can just look it up.
8.8.8.8.
Oh, 8 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 and 4. So Google claims they do it too. Now the question is, do you want all your internet traffic going through Google or not? Because as a DNS service, they also keep logs, and they've got a record of where you go. OpenDNS claims they don't keep any logs. And there's other domain name services out there which you want to be careful, because if you actually went and searched on domain name service providers, there'll be some smaller ones, and you want to really, even though they might be faster, you want to find out who they are, where the servers are physically located, that kind of thing. So at the moment, I'm using OpenDNS, and I have been for years. So Just something to.
So that's a good point. And I've switched to Cloudflare, but there's also a service called Quad 9. And I know Cloudflare has the option of, they've got some different DNS servers. One of their DNS servers, the one that I'm using, actually blocks malware sites.
That's good.
And adware sites, I believe. No, I think it's just malware sites. So
if you subscribe to OpenDNS, they do have an app that you can do things like that. I just put them in my router.
Yeah. So the Cloudflare address that I'm using, they're easy to remember too. They're 1.1.1.1, but their malware blocking DNS is 1.1.1.2. But if you do a little research, it could be very helpful in the long run. And I'm with Mike. I agree that if you just rely on the DNS servers that are provided by the ISP, which just come down as part of your DHCP request from your router, they are not in the business of being a DNS provider. They are in the business of being an ISP. So they may not, and as Mike said in years back, they may not be as up on updating the latest patches on their DNS servers. And there are vulnerabilities just like there are in an operating system, because it is an operating system. And those ne'er-do-wells will do things and cause the, where they would, what was the term you used, Mike?
Man in the middle, I think, is the
yeah, but
exploit.
but it's called something. They poison the DNS.
They poison the
right.
DNS
And they
lookup
put
table.
DNS. They'll poison the DNS table. And with Google, I know as much about Google, but certainly OpenDNS and Cloudflare and Quad 9, their business is DNS. So they're going to be patching they're much more likely to not have a problem with poisoning like just your ISP DNS.
Okay. Ed Eldridge, haven't seen you here in a while. Good to see you. And have you got anything for us? What have you been up to these days?
I was just doing some reading about Apple's coming up with their new Apple-based processor for their iMacs next year. And so far, they're saying that it's only going to support Apple applications until the other people like Microsoft comes on board with a crossover and recompile their applications. So not sure if I'm going to make that jump or not.
Okay. Robert Modest. I didn't say your last name right. Just say it for me, please.
Modest.
Modest. Okay. Good to see you again as well. What have you been? You told us you rebuilt your computers to.
Yeah, I took all my laptops. I've got like four of these HP laptops I bought off of eBay back years ago, upgraded them and such, and just took them all to Windows 10, the 2004, and didn't have any problems with them. But what I'm looking at here in the background, and let me come over to one of the other videos here real quick. I'm into ham radio, and my ham radios that I have are quite old. The new thing that people use is called a DSP, a digital signal processor, DSP. It's a SDR, a software defined radio, which is giving everything up on the screen that you see. The waterfall, you can see frequencies all the way across the channels up here. And that's what the new radios, the ones that cost $1,200 to $2,000, that's their new edition. Well, for $110, I was able to get, can I switch to a different camera here real quick? I was able to get a add-on that hooks into my computer. There we go. It's an RSP-1A by SDR Play, and you can look it up. It's sdrplay.com, and you can hook it up into any computer and listen to shortwave. You can listen to airplanes, and it's all just a little tiny box. Here it is up on my computer here that plugs in, and then my old ham radio, which is the transmitter, is this part down here. The new ones have not only the transmission, but have that part built into them. And they're, again, $1,200 to $2,000. I paid $200 for this and $100 for the additional box to upgrade everything. They're made out of England, and it's an amazing for just a few hundred or $100 basically. You can listen to the entire spectrum of the radio transmissions out there all the way around the world like you used to with the old helicrafters and shortwave radio and such. So for my computers, you know, just buying a SDR Play 1A for the to receive the transmissions and who's talking, and I can turn them on and listen to them. Right now, the signals are all kind of something being transmitted. But that's what I've been doing with my time recently, is getting my license, my ham license and such. And this is my shack, as we call them. There we go. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, if you enjoy listening to the rest of the world out there, for $100, you can plug it into your radio and search all the spectrums, all the different channels, you know, with just a wire hooked up to the back of the thing. You got to watch out for the lightning. You got to disconnect, but besides that, it's a lot of fun. And with the hurricane season, this is part of our emergency setup for Seminole County and such, to be able to communicate if the towers go down and everything like that. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
John, did you get to making the model of that Robert had?
Oh, where is he? It's sdrplay.com.
Alex, quiet.
It's an RSP-1A. And that's the unit I have. They make 3 types. But this is
I
the
did
lower.
get
No.
it for us.
Okay, thank you. I've still got, I'm was a ham operator from 15 years old up. I've still got my old Hammerlin HQ-150,
Okay.
which is a monster, but it's great, but it's too big for the house.
Well, let me ask you, you don't have to learn Morse code anymore to get your license, do you?
No, you
No,
don't.
no. Back then it was 13 words a minute, and I could do 38.
Yeah, all you have to do is take a test.
You used to have to know Morse code to get your
Yeah,
signaling merit badge for Boy Scouts, probably 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, to get a general ham license, it was 13 words a minute. To get your novice, it was 5 words a minute back then.
I've been a tech for 12 years because I could only do 5 words a minute back when I first got licensed. Well, then they got rid of the general or the code.
Yeah.
And I studied up, and I was going to take my test the first week in April.
Yeah.
Of course, COVID happened the last week in March. So I've been waiting the whole time because they canceled testing.
Yeah.
Testing was going into a room and having several people around, and you took a test.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are several companies now that are doing Zoom testing.
How about that?
And the FCC has certified it. And so if we don't open up, I know we won't have any testing in August. They have already in our Lamar's Lake Mary Amateur Radio Society.
Yeah.
We have Zoom meetings also. We had like 39 people on Zoom the other day.
Mm.
It was, since we can't be together, we do this. And I may just sign up and have one of the Zoom testers test me, because I can't use the ham radio, the HF radios. I can use the 2-meter radios here for technician, local type thing. But we have, this is what we do for ham radio. Social distancing, it's 144 megahertz, which is a 2-meter. So, we kind of get into the fun too, but every night at 7.
They've got repeaters and everything now. They don't take up any room.
Yeah.
Back then, it was big. We had the Gonjet with the 2-meter. We do transmitter with those things.
Yeah, with 2-meter and some of the new technology, you can actually talk to France on 2-meter. It jumps over onto the internet as long as the internet's working.
I've got neighbors that do that. Yeah.
And you can talk to France. I haven't done it yet, but that's just one of the new services. And Florida is very interesting that we have our DOT, Department of Transportation, has a ham set all the way along all the interstates for emergencies.
How about that?
And you can talk from like up by Tallahassee to Key West. You can send talk to somebody in Key West by using the DOT ham radio system. It was put in because
is that on 2 meters with the repeaters? Or?
Yes. But the whole thing about it, anybody that's listening to that channel hears what you're saying. But if it's an emergency, such as Key West is getting hit by a hurricane or Tallahassee or whatever, they can get out to a repeater and it's picked up by the whole state. Our state's the only one that has that. And
who holds the license? Just the state license, right?
it's a state, it's put, the DOT towers all the way up and down all the interstate has signal towers probably every 200 miles or so.
How many guys in here are hams?
I used to be. It's expired.
I am.
You're a ham?
Yeah, K4HYV.
Oh, okay. Hey.
And Paul.
As soon as they drop the code,
Alex, stop it.
I've been a ham since 1957.
Oh, man.
1955.
Yeah, there you go, older than me.
I was 2 when you were, and I was 3 or 4 when you were. So
I was in the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
I'm 15 years old. So.
But the technology changes with digital and ham radio.
Oh, yeah.
There's now called DMR and D-Star, that ham radio is going to the digital bits where people can take their 2-meter, which is and a DMR radio, which converts everything to a different digital channel, and they can send messages across. It's like a 2-meter repeater system across the country or the world, and they can talk to satellites and stuff. I haven't got into any of that because you're talking a couple extra $100, but I want to get my general license first, step at a time.
Yeah, that's right. I got a 2,000 watt amplifier if you need one.
Oh my God. I don't want to talk to the moon.
When I talk on it, the fluorescents light up in the garage and they're not turned on.
Yeah, there's so many people on the bands now, even though the sun affects all the bands. The bands in the ionosphere reflect back the ham radio signals.
Sunspots.
Sunspots
That's actually
energize
called it.
those.
Yeah, right.
And we've been in, what, a 6-year slowdown of sunspots recently?
Yeah, they run 11-year cycles.
Yeah, so we're like halfway.
Right.
But there's a lady who's on every day, and we have satellites out around the sun now that we can look on the back side and the front side. And she looks at this stuff and says, okay, there's a sunspot that'll be coming out and aiming towards the Earth Tuesday at 4 p.m. And so get ready, because certain bands will be active and things light up. I mean, it's just, you can't get in because everybody is talking, because the bands are opened up. I mean, they are reflective at that time. There's several ham satellites that are up there that people will try to get like a 4,000 mile or a 5,000 mile bounce off of a satellite, talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they set it up that they're going to both be bouncing off the same satellite and talking. It's very interesting. It's a very highly technical.
About 1975 or 80, we bounced off the moon. Amateur radio did.
Yeah, people are doing it on higher bands now, and they try to go higher bands and lower wattage.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are still putting stuff together that's scary. But again, it's a lot of computer control in the thing. Most of the new radios coming out are like this box. They're software-defined radios. This one has tubes in it, and mostly solid state, but there are a couple tubes in this one. It's enough that old, but the transmitter tubes.
Yeah, the power tubes.
Power tubes.
Yeah.
But everything else is now SDR. They're all digital. They're only about this wide, and they do 100 watts. They cost $2,500. It's called Flex, F-L-E-X. That's one of the leaders. But your receiver and your transmitters have no tubes, and there's very few transistors and stuff. They do have power MOSFETs and stuff in them, but it's all digital. It's a computer basically. But yeah, we have more ham radio operators now than I think we probably did when you guys started, because they're really pushing it in the schools, the emergency, since there's no code.
Yeah, no code anymore.
No
I had
code.
to copy 13 words a minute.
Oh God.
I really don't. That's what got me into it. I wasn't a technician when I was young. The Air Force kind of put me in that business, but I was always fascinated by the ability of people to communicate without talking. And code gives you the ability to communicate. It's the basic community. When nothing else will work, you can talk in code.
Yeah.
And during the Alaska earthquake in, what, 67? I handled traffic. I lived in California. I handled traffic out of there. And the old place, there were only two places other than the military out, and they were both ham radio.
Right.
So, yeah, we practice. He probably told you, once a year, hams pack up all their gear and they go in the country and operate in the country.
That just happened.
Yeah.
Field
day. Yeah.
Field day just happened last month.
And
since we couldn't meet together,
yeah,
we were able to use our homes as our field day and then put our Lamar's group as our club. So all that information just went to corporate basically. And you know, you'd think ham radio, you think of old people, blah, blah, blah. But the youngsters are really getting into it tremendously.
That's great.
It's just a lot of fun.
Well,
and
I suggested for our club a long time ago, you know how they have the Elmers. I don't know if they still do that. We have Elmers for amateur radio, which are hams that are experienced, help inexperienced hams to get their gear going. And back when I started, we built a lot of it.
Yeah,
But,
it's very complicated.
But I always thought that would be a nice thing for a radio club like us to do, is to provide sort of an Elmer for people who want to learn programming, who had no asset to be able to do it. But it turns out that, like code, actual programming is not something that most people who use computers do.
No, they use
a very small percentage, and it's just like ham radio, you know, very small percentage actually build their equipment nowadays. Most of my equipment is home brewed.
Oh, yes.
I built my 2-gallon transmitter out of the final tubes out of a FM radio station I worked for. And they were huge, and they cost hundreds of dollars a piece back then. When one went bad, you did not throw it away. You sent it back to the factory, and they were rebuilt. And the gentleman that owned the station sold it, and they left. I was there today to get my commercial license off the wall, and I was talking to Ralph Lambeth, and they left, and they'd been gone 30 minutes, and I went back in the building, and I said, Ralph, come here and look. There were 4 boxes of tubes on the floor, and there were no cell phones back then. And he says, they left those. We can't get in touch with them. They'll be in Chicago, straight driving through. And I said, what are you going to do with them? He says, I don't know. You want them? And so I sold the heck out of them. That's what I built my 2-gallon transmitter out of. And I've still got about a half a dozen of them left.
Really? Oh, dear. They're worth a fortune now if they're still good. This is an automatic antenna tuner.
Automatic.
Right here. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good. Well, one of our members passed. He became a silent key. And I went up to his place and I picked up his antenna tuner. I don't know, you can see it.
It's manual, yeah. Oh, it's got the meter built in.
It's got the meter built in. It's upside down right now, but that's a manual one that would probably handle your 2,000 watt.
Yeah, I have one that handles my 2,000.
It's amazing. I mean, the old stuff is works of art, just works of art inside.
Well, we had a lot of fun building the things in those days. That was my big thing, was I like to build the equipment and test it and do different things with it. And during when the first transceivers started coming out, I started building transceivers, and I would build a single like 40 meter or 20 meter transceiver and sell it, and then make some money that way. That was kind of fun. I worked all continents on teletype.
Teletype. There's a world we haven't heard in a long time.
No, I had a Model 19 with a typing reperforated mic. None of this is interest to you guys. We'll have to get together and talk ham radio.
Yeah, all that paper tape. Oh my God! Yeah, one of the first companies when we were selling overseas, we had a teletype machine to set up for specialty computer for hospitals. To measure ultrasound. I was their tech to teach it, and I had to go to England. Well, the order came through by teletype, and it was like 20 feet long of all the stuff they wanted and everything. It was a lot of fun.
It's fun. It was, you know, I was a civil defense coordinator up in Escambia County when I lived up there, and working at that. And we put teletype on the emergency bus so we could have privacy going back and forth, because nobody can copy teletype. He's got another teletype.
Right.
And during the, you guys probably don't remember, an airplane crashed into Escambia Bay, a passenger airplane. And when they tried to talk, the police radios couldn't talk from down over, it was on the other side of a big cliff. And I was sitting on top of that cliff, and I handled most of their communications on amateur radio coming out of there. So it was kind of, amateur radio has always been fun for me. I don't hardly do it anymore, but I still got a couple of transceivers out there, but it's just not something I have time for. I'm retired, so I don't have anything to do, but I don't have time for it.
Well, that's what, by having a $200 transmitter, but by having the entire scale of the different channels where I can see who's talking where, I can go and listen to them, and then go to that frequency and see if they're speaking Spanish, Japanese, English.
Yeah.
Because as the bands and reflectivity, different parts of the world open up, so you get different parts of the world. And it's quite exciting. I mean, when you're listening to Puerto Rico and the hurricanes going through, and the ham radio guy you're listening to goes, I have to shut down and go higher because the waves are at my house.
Yeah.
And you're listening to him, and he's the only communication,
That's it.
you know, for days at that time.
Yeah.
Thank God he had a solar panel. But yeah, we were transmitting stuff back and forth because of his visa bounce came down basically in Florida here. How his antenna was set up. It wasn't long range, it was vertical.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. If anybody else wants to get into ham radio or whatever, it's actually, you can get into it cheap because everybody's buying the new ones with the waterfalls built in and mini deep of this or that. All you need is a simple transmitter.
Waterfall. Technical name for that waterfall is it's a frequency spectrometer.
There you go. You can also, you can make this thing into a spectrum analyzer.
Mm-hmm.
This signal SDR, the signal software defined radio. It goes from 1 kilohertz to 2 gigahertz, and it's 14-bit.
God.
You can search all those frequencies, so you can listen to anybody, really.
You can, yeah.
You got to have the type of antenna and know what you're doing, but it's pretty exciting for $100.
It's
back then when I got into it, we lived on 14 acres. And my room was in the attic as a kid. I had a full length 80 meter antenna. Which my neighbor's barn way down the lower part of ours. It was center fed.
What'd you do? You have like 200 feet of wire, or how?
Yep.
Well, figure 80 meters. Meters about 3.5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 80 times 3.5, or 420 feet of it. That's interesting. Yep.
Go ahead.
I had two tin cans and a string.
And that works too. It's just
That works.
distance is the problem there.
Well, you got to take and put the wax on the string and wet it and then hold it tight, and you can get it to frequency transmit. If you have, especially the old Hawaiian punch cans.
The big ones, huh?
The big ones, yeah. Get a lot of bass.
Yeah. Another thing that works is pretty good as a hose. If there's no water in the asshole and the other end doesn't blow it. Dear. Fun stuff.
Things that I'm getting ready to do is I'm going to get a 34-inch television to go up here, and I'm going to get another Nook, probably an i5, and put it on and get rid of the laptop. So I've got more room for my spectrum analyzer, the waterfall and such up here, and then some other digitals. So I'm going to be upgrading this with a new Nook. I was thinking about an i7 with 10, but then I've heard some not good things about the i7 10.
I'm loving mine.
Power and such. So I don't need a 7.
Well, I got 2 water radiators on mine, so I took that.
You know, I just want the little box again to put on the back of the thing. So i5, maybe a 8 or 9 version. Because these
give you all you want.
Yeah, well, see, most of the power is inside the box.
Right.
You know, all the changes and everything. The display up there, the computer's only really doing the display.
Just a display, right.
So I can get away with not a real smart one, but I want it to be able to do other stuff while I'm sitting here in the shack. But that's it. It's nice to see everybody again, and I see our Denny's closed.
Yeah.
Thank God. No.
Let me go next. My computer, what happened was my UPS just blew. Bow, went offline and dropped me off everything. So I'm replugged in. I was talking see the picture that Paul's got behind him. we're talking about that, and I wanted to show him this, and I couldn't find it. That's me flying a Fokker D1. You can see the sky and propellers moving and everything, and my scarf is out behind me and everything. So, and I just wanted to show you that what happens when you use Photoshop, because there's the picture that it came from. Picture in a museum. But also, again, that's just Photoshop stuff messing around. There's a picture of a Ford Tri-Motor. Look in there, you see me inside the window waving at you? That's a fake. Here's the real picture. But you notice the neat thing is, it's kind of nice. I'm behind the glass. I'm actually behind the glass in the Photoshop. I got in a thing one Christmas. I made pictures for the kids. My daughter this daughter still holds the record for 10,000 meter rollerblade. To this day, she still holds that record. That's her in the center there, and that's a fake because it's a real Olympic picture of skaters winning. Went to visit my bud Larry. He's gone now, and we didn't have a picture of the two of us together, so that's the two of us together, which was a fake. And by the way, you see Larry's a little chubby there. I took a picture out of him out of that, and I slimmed him down by 40 pounds and sent that back to his wife. And she got on him. I shouldn't have done that. But that's just Photoshop stuff. I wanted to show Paul because it involved aircraft, and I know he's into that. I still haven't. I built a new gizmo. I can show you another time, but it's a table for when I fly my flight simulator. Because sometimes you want to fly with a yoke, you got to go like this, and other times you want to fly with a stick like a fighter pilot. So I got to build a table that on one side of it is a yoke, and then when you want to fly as a fighter pilot, you turn the table halfway, and you could have got one stick. And I put that up on the internet too for other crazies like me.
Do you have feet pedals on it?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah, got rudder, aileron, and elevator. Most of the time, I'm like any good pilot. I fly with the autopilot. I like to land and take off, and of course, in virtual reality, it's kind of uncanny how it feels when you the first few times you do it, and the airplane leaves the ground, and you get that feeling I'm really going up, which of course you're not. Has anybody ever used Google Earth?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You got to try that on virtual reality. My goodness gracious, is that something? Because you can turn and look around and see what's behind you.
With the heads, you mean with the headsets?
Yeah, this thing.
Oh, okay. See.
And I can show you that. I can put it up on a screen, but it's not virtual reality. It's the same, and that's the way you fly the airplane. You fly the airplane, you're inside it, so you can look down and see the ground, or look it down to your own wheels if they're that kind of airplane. You can do whatever you need to do, just like you would in a real airplane.
Do you get nauseous at all?
Pardon me?
Does the screens being that close make you nauseous at all, or it's all pretty good?
No, what seems to get people is the motion. Like people have trouble with ships or airplanes motion, because this is an apparent motion, and some people really have a lot of trouble with illness, with motion sickness in them. Being a simulator pilot since 1958, I don't have that problem. So I've flown everything from the old P-80 up to the F-18. So in the simulation, I've tried them all. Helicopters, big 8.4 engine, the whole thing. But I just wanted
to Jacksonville,
Yep.
Cecil Field, and
Yep.
I flew the S3 simulator that was being developed.
Yep.
And it was just about maybe a quarter of a second off between what you saw and what you experienced because it was a motion base.
Yeah.
And after I took off, I got so sick. I said, guys, stop the simulation.
Yeah.
It's either that or get me the bag. So
Yeah. a lot of times.
Really, if you don't have that kind of coordination between what you see and what
Well,
you feel.
That we do now. We got that. That's not a
Yeah.
problem. The problem we had really back when I retired back in 2000 was in frame rates, because your eye has a specific frame rate, and you have to make 20 frames a second so your eye doesn't get confused. Okay, well, that was a problem back then, to get 20 frames a second. Now with this thing, I usually fly at about 40 frames a second. And if I don't use this, it's 100 frames a second. So there is absolutely no lag. You make a motion. Well, of course, there's a motion between you and the airplane doing anything, but you know, it's from the standpoint of reality, you know, it still, you can get people because it is an apparent motion, and Mike is not a bit unusual in that. A lot of people, you go on the internet and talk about virtual reality. There's a lot of people in the simulator business that get sick. Seems like the games don't do that. Now, I have never played a game on that thing, but basically it has a capability of defining a space, and it will let you play the game. You can shoot arrows and do sword fighting and shoot guns and move around, jump. A lot of people hurt every year by jumping on things that aren't really there in virtual reality, and it's dangerous. But if you get to the edge, they used to have little things you put up in the corners of your room that measured it. Now with these, they detect it. You don't have any measurement thing. It's a detector, and if you get too close to the edge, what happens is you see through the game. You can see the edge getting close to you, because it's really a TV set. It's a bunch of TV sets in there.
What
Cameras.
model is that?
This is an Oculus Rift S.
Okay, I've heard of Oculus and Rift, yeah.
The S model is just a higher frame rate, higher density. Because the problem is you're trying to fly an airplane and look at little gauges and push little buttons. And so you end up with leaning forward a lot, which I'd have to do anyhow. And there's a button on the controller, because here's a controller. One of these goes on each hand. And essentially it's your hand. You can grab things, put your thumb out, and it gives you this ability. So you can reach out, turn a knob, and it does it by putting a laser out the end of this. Because you can't reach out, because you reach out and you try to touch one, you hit your keyboard or you hit something that's not there. And it takes a little getting used to running, but it's worth every bit of it to fly with virtual reality. I'll set it up one of these nights and at least let you see what I see. And it's for me, having been in the simulation business for, well, since 1957, what is that, 70 years, something like that?
Yeah, that's a while.
I've seen them come and go. The picture that you're looking at right now, when I first started programming, I was a programmer. After we got rid of the analog stuff, I wanted to see what the insides work. So I learned how to program. In fact, one of these days, I found something the other day. I found my programming cards from the 1960s and 70s. I was going to bring them in and pass them around to let everybody look and see what they look like. That's how we talked to computers in those days.
Were you doing Fortran or?
No, machine language.
Oh, you were ones and zeros.
Well, no, it's called assembly language.
Yeah.
So, I didn't do the ones and zeros. There's a thing called an assembler, and then you return an object tape and so on and so on.
We used to take the excess cards and make Christmas wreaths out of them.
Absolutely. That was one of the big things. You turn them and staple them together. I had a lot of those.
Big circle.
Yep. The Hollerith card was invented in 1910 for the census, and we were still using them in the 60s for programming.
One of my jobs was to take the cards and run them through a machine and create a floppy disk for them.
Yep.
Out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I went through college, they didn't have floppy disks yet. We were putting it on tape.
This was in my adult life. This was.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I graduated from college when I was 47 instead of university. I had to graduate because I was smart enough to do the jobs, but they wouldn't let me play in the arena until I had a degree. So once I got a computer degree, everybody thought I knew what I already knew. But it was they were big reels of tape in those. You probably see them in the old science fiction.
Oh, yeah.
And they had big things, and then a guy invented a disc. It was a 10-inch disc. It was floppy, and he worked for IBM, and then he actually invented a disc that was in, it was about a 15-inch disc, and it was inside a carrier. You couldn't take it out; it wasn't changeable. But the first disc I worked on was actually for a Radio Shack, and it held 100K, 100,000 bits. That was a lot, figuring the old disc you had would only take 8K. And I thought I was really downtown with that. It wasn't mine. I bought it for work, and but it's it's just one of those things where looking at this thing grow, how it's grown, continues to fascinate me. What we're able to do nowadays with computers and simulators, just generating one of these pictures. You know, when you go to the doctor and he generates that picture and shows your heart and all that stuff. It took, the first time we generated a full picture like that was impressive. It took us over 24 hours to generate it. The computer just wasn't fast enough. You know, we got, like, my clock rate on this thing is over 500 gigahertz. When I first started working, they were like 36 kilohertz.
Do you remember creating pictures on a line printer with different characters?
Oh yeah, I still got some.
I got a line printer up in the attic. I got a couple of the big carriage ones.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah, and the tape, you know, the cartridges are like this.
Yeah.
3 feet long.
That was a big deal, having when those line printers came out. That was really something.
And
interesting enough, when I started programming the Radio Shack computer, the GRS-80, I converted my teletype to a printer. I wrote a program so that my teletype would print out my object loads. That was the kind of thing we did in those days. Just talk to the computer. And that's when you find out that a computer does what you tell it, which isn't necessarily what you want it to do. Fun stuff. I still am fascinated by it. One of the things I did when I retired, I thought I'd see what the Wares boys were doing. And so I went in and started looking behind the web pages and got on IRC. It's called Internet Relay Chat, which is where all the
IRC.
Yeah, where all us crooks used to hang out and talk to each other. Yeah.
This is a great book.
I was a hacker for a while, and I thought, well, that's a good way to get in trouble, so I stopped doing it. Besides, it wasn't really interesting.
Yeah, we used to use the Captain Crunch whistle to open up the AT&T phone lines at IU at Indiana University, and you could dial anything.
Yep.
All over the world, there'd be a line out that phone booth because somebody published the frequency that opened up the AT&T long lines back then, and then you could just keep dialing and you never hung up.
Yeah,
right. You would double click and then dial another one. But Captain Crunch cereal had a whistle in it that actually duplicated that frequency and would open up.
Yes.
Yeah, open up that long line frequency, and yeah, that was that information I think is in this book also. But Hackers by Steve Levy tells about the early Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, you know, all the guys, because Steve was right there with them in California and everything. So it's
easy
a good book.
Once you kind of get in with the group, it's pretty easy to for a programmer anyhow. I don't presume to be a programmer anymore. I'm just an old man, but if you write it, I can probably read it. I'd rather build something out of wood now. But it's just, I've always found it fascinating. Computers are things that do things for you that are just amazing. I just, you know, it's if you can go to mathematics, that's fine. That's great. If you can program a computer, you can get there faster. That's just the way it works. It's really neat. But here we are today.
Those old payphones in the college, you could take a 1,000-watt resistor and shove one wire down into the mouthpiece and touch the other one to the silver part of the coin relief, and you get your dial tone and talk anywhere you want to go.
Really? I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
So we always kept one or two up on top of the phone so everybody could use them.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I used to go to some of the black hackers meetings then at IU just to And I realized I really shouldn't be here with these type of people because you could get into big trouble.
Well, they were trying to, though. They were really, but the maliciousness was in disconnecting, get somebody's system to go discombobulate, not to steal things.
No,
well, it's different now.
Yeah, back then they were just trying to open up because at Indiana University, we had people from all over the world, you know, students.
Right.
And they wanted to talk to home or even California. But, you know, long distance back in 71 cost a lot of money.
Yeah,
Yes,
sure did.
You know, you could get the whole family together and everybody had 2 minutes to talk to grandpa and grandma, you know, and, you know, yeah, back in the day.
Talking about that, did you ever run a phone patch? You know what those are? I
never did.
I used to sit when I lived in California. I worked with guys that were on Johnson Island, and so I used to patch them all over the United States with out of my ham gear, using like 40 meters or 20 meters.
Like you would see radar on MASH dial and then talk to Sparky, and Sparky would do a phone patch to the United States.
Well, that's a field telephone. That's a field telephone.
Well, order ribs from Chicago.
Yeah, St. Louis, right. Yeah, it was something we used to do just because the guys couldn't afford to call home, and you could let them talk as long as the frequency held up. I didn't care. I'm going to be out there in the garage doing something anyhow.
Right.
So you hook them up, and so I had a pretty good phone patch, and of course it was a telephone too, so I could dial right from my computer anywhere.
Well, the other thing about the earlier computers is when you developed code, anybody wanted it, you gave it to them. You shared your code. Yeah, you know, if you had something that was better than mine, you gave it to me if I asked you.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, that computer program that I wrote to make my teletype do listings for my computer development, I gave that to somebody. Oh, I gave it to the Navy, and they were using it. And I always used to bitch about the fact that people would write code and they wouldn't comment what they were doing. So I did that on that thing. I just wrote it, and it was probably 250 lines, maybe not much more than that anyhow, of code. And they brought it back to me about 6 years later and said, we want to modify it. We don't know what you did. I couldn't even tell them what I did. I had to sit there and read the damn code in order to be able to tell them what I had in my mind to do it. But it's you know, guys get hit in a hurry and you get logic in your mind and you want to write the code for it and you don't comment it. And
well, the comments all had to be keyed into a card. And so it was all that extra work that you had to do to get the comments in the program.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was you know, it's just something else had to be typed in. If you were typing it yourself, like you say, you don't want to do that. That's different things. Ham radio was always fun for me, and over the years I've had several different setups. And in fact, I used to, when I traveled a lot, when I ran a quality assurance program, I traveled a lot, and I had a slinky antenna, and I would set it up inside a motel room, and I had a tuner for it. It tunes itself, and I would run that, but it was always CW, always code. I hardly ever used phone. And then of course I'd put the radio in the car and talk on the way driving back and forth. So it was. I don't know if that's a lot of ham radios in cars anymore or not. Are there?
Oh yeah, there's tons. Because they're small.
If they got the repeater.
Well, even HF, because the antennas that they have are curly cued, and they actually will tune themselves.
Oof.
Huh.
Yeah, so you can do like 60 or 80 meters, and this thing's got a coil, and then it extends itself. It's pretty impressive. They aren't cheap.
Yeah. But that's not $1.98.
No, but a lot of people do code out of their cars.
That's a little much.
They'll just sit there. Here's some of my old Apple gear. I don't know if people can see. There's a monitor, printer.
Yeah, sure.
A few disk drives. keyboards. Is it coming through? Let's see.
Yep.
2 GSs, I don't know, 6 of those. Dad liked Apple, so he helped support Steve and all of them back in the day. And now I've got it. Anybody like some old Apple gear? Cheap?
Does anybody,
Reopen my Apple BBS again.
Yeah, there you go.
If he had spent the amount of money that he spent on those computers on Apple stock, you would be rich today.
I know, he didn't.
does anybody use single sideband? As a hand-
SSD?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
everybody. You don't have. There's no AM anymore.
Everybody uses single sideband.
Oh, they
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
I had no
No
idea.
AM.
There's a CW group out of the East Coast, and I can't remember their name, but they're actually teaching online the Morse code. And so people sign up, and it's so computer controlled. There's readers that that will read 25 words a minute.
Yeah.
So you can actually read what somebody's sending, 25 words a minute. You can type on the keyboard, it converts it to Morse code, or you can sit there and do the double paddles and stuff. But my hearing on the Morse code, I just could never do it.
I've still got my old lightning bug in the garage.
Here's something.
My bug is a 1943 Lionel bug.
Is it?
Yep. And I actually had to add some weight because it was so fast. I had to add weight to it.
Yeah.
If you
Mine's
guys
got-
want to really, if you want to
Mine's
see
got adjustable
something,
weights on it.
What
if
you
you
got?
want to see something,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
here
Very
is
good.
an AMCO code course that I've had for 50 years.
That would be worth something.
I got my novice license back in the late 50s, somewhere when I was 13. And this is a whole stack, 15 to
Records.
20, 45 RPM records.
That's great.
Now you got to find a record player.
Yeah, I can't do that anymore.
And it comes with the code course, shows you what each record,
I bet some of these code people would go frickin' nuts. Sorry, go nuts for that thing, that whole course.
and I've got my old technician and general AMCO guides how to pass the license. Let me tell you something. Those tests back then were 10 times more technical, than the stuff of today.
Right.
Today, it's more rules and regulations. Back then, it was really technical, and you had to know a lot of stuff to pass those tests. When they dropped the code a few years ago, somebody told me they dropped the code. I went right out and got my amateur extra license. and for me, it was simple because the first, I did study, of course it's a test and you have to come up to speed. But the first two were easy to get the general. And the third one was basically my high school or college electronics and imaginary numbers and all that stuff. But you could actually pass the amateur extra test. If you knew everything except the complicated stuff, you can get through because there's only about 5 complex
Questions on it.
questions.
That's right.
And you could forget about even doing those. And if you get the rest right, you can get through the amateur extra.
Yep.
But my goal was to get 100 on all those tests. So I studied really hard. And I mean, every night I was doing the online tests, and I had my book, and it was 700 questions. I knew every question by heart. So I think I aced the general. They don't tell you what the score is unless you kind of press them. They just tell you pass or fail.
Right.
But I really wanted to know what I did. But, I got all the old books and everything still,
You must
they're
have a
technical.
5,000 square foot house to store all that stuff.
They are technical books, and they're, to get a novice license, you had to draw circuits, cold pits, oscillators, and all of this stuff. You had to draw this stuff out.
Well, yeah, you can still. I bet he can still tell me the difference between a cold pits and a clap oscillator.
You know, so I was probably smarter back then. I don't know.
Things are, it's you know, just the idea of running nonlinear amplifiers, which we did in those days, which means you shot an amplifier way past its cutoff point, and in order to get the power out of it, because that was the old days of AM, or no code, or because in code you just turn the amplifier on and off, and but in AM you have to modulate it. There's two kinds. One's called Heising, and the other one is high, which is audio line actually in the RF circuit. So it's but single sideband is easy to manufacture, and it's very easy to send. This requires linear amplifiers. It can't be distorted. And but you've heard FM. It's got a carrier. Single sideband has no carrier, and you can't hear it worth a darn unless you inject the carrier back into it.
A lot of the FM now, are people working repeaters, and I've got a 2 meter 440 megahertz. 2 meters is 144 megahertz.
Yeah.
I got one of those rigs that I can throw in my car with a magnetic antenna. I just kind of hook everything up, and I'm on the air. And basically, I'm just talking local. So most of the FM is local stuff. And I got this little rig here. Because it is mobile, it can hook up on top of my regular radio, which is an HF radio and 2 meters. And this thing will work here in the house or in the car. So I got a power supply for it in the house. And I built a 440. I built a 440 and a 2 meter antenna. It's on the roof. So it works real well, except nobody's on 440. You can hardly ever get an answer.
440 sucks up so much power if it's not tuned right to your antenna that the 144 frequency travels 10 times, 30 times better and easier.
Yeah, it does.
And there's so many repeaters
that now
there's a repeater
be good boy.
Net where they like open it up, several of them, and you can talk to somebody in like California on your frequencies. It's just very interesting, the 2 meter expansion that's happened in the last 4 or 5 years. And my Beifeng Chinese radio cost me $30 delivered. Free shipping. Oh, there you go. You got one too.
I got 4 of them.
Yeah, I got 2. I got this.
And you can use them for walkie-talkies on public service frequencies.
Yeah.
And you can put in codes that it's like you have to have the code. Somebody can receive the frequency, but they won't get the audio. I forget the name of the codes.
Oh.
Digital codes.
Oh.
And there's another one that it'll also do, but yeah, I got a whole bunch of these radios. They're really great. You've heard of public, what's it called? Public radios. You can go down to the store and buy
GMRS.
You can buy these radios that are basically walkie-talkies, but they've only got a few frequencies, and you can break in if you want to. These you can program.
So stay out of there.
Huh?
No, I'm at the dog.
You can
A lot of
these.
Yeah, my
all the
grandkids
GSM
have those. The GMRS, the parents bought them for the kids because they do a lot of hiking in case the kids would get separated. They're 8 and 9 or 9 and 10 now. In case they get separated, they can call because the distance on them are several miles and you don't need a license for them, which is good.
It's amazing how far they go.
Yeah. and they cost 20 some bucks. and you can put in 108 frequencies, but the thing about it, the ones that come from China the frequencies are open. So you can actually get in trouble by talking on the military bands, the airplane bands, yeah. So you have to program them to US frequency because they sell all over the world, and some of the ham bands are different in Japan than they are here. So they have to be able to open them up to their ham bands different than our local ham, like 2 meters, stuff like that. But gentlemen, it's been exciting. It's about 10 till 10.
It is.
Yep.
Past my bedtime.
Time flies. Yep. It was all fun. Thank you all. Enjoyed it. No.
Too bad we can't go for pizza and beer, though.
Yeah, it is.
And Huey, I see you're still with us. If you'll get the recording to Mike, he can put it up on the YouTube channel. That'd be great. You're okay.
Gentlemen, hopefully see you other ham guys at the Lamar's meeting when we finally are able to get there.
What is Lamar's? That's your radio club?
Yeah, that's our let's see what Lake Monroe Amateur Radio Society, Lamar's.
That's interesting. I helped set up a club called Lamar's, Libertyville and Mundelein Amateur Radio Society.
Yeah, I'm KE4 TJV, so I'm in the book.
Oh, I was K4JYD, Jolly Young Devil.
Well, now you can actually choose your ham numbers. Yep. You can go to.
I've been K4HYV for since 1968.
Yeah, I'm not going to change. I mean, I got all my stuff for it, so even
the guys who don't know, those numbers in there used to indicate your location.
Right.
Okay, I was a W0 HDS before that because I was in Iowa, and then before that I was K9VYZ, which is K9HDS. I'm sorry, which is Illinois, and now I'm K4HYV, which is South Florida. So they have all that. The FCC did all that for us, and you used to have to take a test. You had to pay for it. What was it, $10 back when, something like that?
Yeah, but it's 15 now.
Oh, it's free if you're renewing.
Oh, for renewing.
Yeah, it's free. So it's
the test is $15.
Oh, is it?
To take? Yeah, you can pay $15 and get your tech, general, and your extra all at the same time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So it's still cheap.
Well, in my next life, I might consider it. I just never did get into it. I did some CB stuff, but that's about as close I got to anything like ham radio.
Yeah, I got my presidential CB out in the garage someplace.
Oh, I got a lot of antique radios still. So
CB was fun. I used to modify all those units. That was fun.
All right, guys, I'm going to stop the recording because I'm going to go.
That's a good time to do it. Good night, all.
Take care.